her over to his house to run lines. And when she got there, she noticed like a gun on his table. He was nowhere to be found. There was a gun and there was porn on the TV. And she just like shouted out to him, Dan, sorry, I gotta go. I forgot about an appointment, and just booked it out of there.
And I remember seeing a documentary with him, you know, because he died a couple years ago. But there's a documentary of him just like chain smoking cigarettes, talking to a camera like in an apartment. He's like, yeah, I had a lot of guns back then. I was into porn. And like he doesn't deny it at all. And another mean thing he did to that girl, dude. Do you guys remember the scene where Tina's running up the stairs to like escape or whatever? She's in the basement, Tarman. Dude. Mm-hmm. Dan O'Bannon broke that step on purpose and didn't tell her, dude. And she ran up and fell through that step and, like, luckily didn't, like, legit break her arm or leg or whatever. That's fucked up.
Yeah, from what I understand, this was a pretty crazy shoot. Like, they ended up firing one of the special effects guys and brought somebody else in, and the cast really didn't seem to get along very well. And it was just, you know, it was a quick and cheap shoot. And, you know, none of this, I feel like, translates when you watch the movie. No. Like, when you watch the movie, it's just a party. But yeah, when you hear these stories, it seemed like
also
it really
you
sucked.
made Trash do the dance 3 times. It's like, did you know you couldn't use, you know, full frontal, and you just made her do it 3 times? Like, that's the thing that just jumped out in my mind.
That does seem odd.
Well, I guess Clu Gulager or whatever. I'm sure I'm saying his name wrong, but they got in a fist fight apparently on set too.
This movie sounds ridiculous.
Oh yeah, Clu Gulager went after him with a baseball bat, from what I understand.
Dude, the documentary is honestly as interesting as the movie.
Yeah, you just see like him with a baseball. Yeah. Like, it's party time.
But they did multiple commentary tracks where they have all of the cast like talking about it, then they have all the crew talking about it.
They just all talking shit.
Then they have,
like
not really, but they are all kind of talking shit nicely about Dan O'Bannon. They're like, "Oh, remember like when he did that? Like that was kind of weird."
I remember.
But yeah, really great, familiar cast. You're right, Joe. A lot of people that we recognize from the '80s. Also, I could not put my finger on it, but Don Calfa. Loved his character in this. Ernie, I think was his name.
Ian Ballmer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dude, I loved his character, but like, I can't remember seeing him in anything, but he was such a standout.
The only thing I remember him from, and I didn't look him up, but he was in Weekend at Bernie's. He's like the guy that is supposed to kill Bernie. It's been years since I saw that, but I remember his face from that.
You're right. Yeah, Paulie in Weekend at Bernie's. Yeah, you're right. I love him so much, and I was so surprised I'd like never really seen him before. And he died only a couple years ago too. He's been around for quite a while. But yeah, loved him. I thought he was amazing. Yeah, do you guys have any favorite characters that stand out?
You know, I was gonna say Frank, who his casting was kind of a holdover from when Toby Hooper was involved, because they had worked together on Poltergeist. And, you know, he's the guy that, you know, moved the headstones in Poltergeist. Right. And I just love him in this movie. I think him and Tom Matthews are like just a great comedic pair. They're like Abbott and Costello. You know, I think they're hilarious in this movie.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I love, just like how young he is, how old he is. But he's kind of like that older guy that's taking you under his wing. He's going to tell you things that you shouldn't probably do or hear.
That when he was like teaching him, that felt like so real. So like improv almost and natural. I always like to see him when he's just like, "Do you want to see him?" He's like, "See what? The corpses," and like does like a face. Like he just nailed lines. He nailed lines.
Oh, and in that scene when they're talking about where they get the cadavers and everything, and they're like, "Oh, we get them from India or whatever." Apparently, after this movie came out and they said that, apparently that like stopped. That whole industry stopped becoming a thing. That was another thing I heard about this movie, that like the India cadaver industry actually pretty much stopped after this movie.
Okay, because see, I wanted to bring this up because when we did our Creep Show episode, I said that the creep in that movie, you know, Tom Savini built him on top of an Indian cadaver. Oof. So that's really interesting that this was like a real thing, that you could get dead bodies from India, and I guess Hollywood took full advantage of it. That's so disturbing.
Dude, yeah.
There's actually a bunch of little bits in this early scene where Freddie and Frank are walking around this medical supply shop. There's a bunch of little bits that have really stuck with me. That was one of them. And actually, it was later when they talk about in the crematorium when they say the heart is like it's the hardest thing to burn. And then when they're talking about rigor mortis, I don't know. There's so many little bits of information about the human body that's really stuck with me from watching this movie as a kid.
Well, first off, I'm going to pour myself a nice Chianti tonight, and I go down a YouTube or Google rabbit hole about Indian cadavers and just learn about it and then report back to you what I find. Fascinating stuff. This podcast is insane right now. I'm just like thinking about what we've talked about. What a spectrum.
No, seriously. But I did hear that. And, also mentioning Poltergeist earlier, they said that those are real corpses too. And that was 82 as well. And this was 85, right? So maybe, maybe in the early 80s, they were just like, whatever. There's a company that we need bodies, and they'll provide them.
It's so crazy.
I texted you guys a picture too of when the dog cadaver comes alive and they start smashing it with like a crutch or something. My dog was watching that scene. I was like, oh, don't look at this, Smiley. Like, oh, poor dog. Watching a dog cut in half, like slowly moving, getting whacked by a crutch. I'm like, oh, like this dog has seen so much craziness. Like,
I love that though.
I gotta say, I feel like this movie gets the balance of horror and comedy so perfectly, and it was done well a lot in the 80s. I feel like if you look back on like American Werewolf or The Lost Boys, even Jason Lives, we talked about it there. There were a lot of good horror comedies. I think this is one of the best because I feel like when it's funny, it's genuinely funny. And there are some legit disturbing moments. Like a moment that's always stuck out to me is when Frank kills himself, when he burns himself in the crematorium. I feel like that is legitimately disturbing.
Oh God. He's like hands are burning as he's like trying to shut the stuff and gets on it. Yeah, dude. And he takes his ring off. Like it's brutal. But like this zombie goo or whatever, it's getting on everybody. This is like way more intense than any other zombie movie because like even if you're decapitated, even if your arms are removed, the arms still want to kill people. So it's like this is the most aggressive zombie thing I think I've ever seen, right? I mean, I don't know. Can't think of any other one.
No. I mean, yeah, that's a great twist. They think, once they destroy the brain that they're going to be okay because they know Night of the Living Dead. They know the rules, but then they put like a pickaxe through this one zombie's brain and it doesn't stop them. And they have to literally dismember him and burn him. But that only leads to more problems.
Dude, that and then also like how easily it spreads. I love it when they just throw it in the crematorium like, all right, great, like we're done, it's all over, and all of a sudden that just spreads, the rain drops down and then it gets into all the corpses. Like that's such a good idea. Like it's just really clever.
It reminded me, I mean, obviously the South Park episode, the Worcester sauce or whatever.
Oh yeah, the pink eye,
that's the one. When it's the same concept as this.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they took it from this movie.
Oh, it's from this. I realized that. I was like, oh, that's where the South Park episode got it from.
Like, pink eye. Yeah, exactly. Now, I know you're gonna know this, Joe, but Eric, do you remember where they said this takes place? Where it's set?
It was like the first frame.
I think so. They mentioned it a couple times throughout.
I don't remember. Philadelphia, was it? No.
So it's Kentucky. That's where it's set, Louisville, Kentucky.
Right. Oh, and the map at the end shows Kentucky. Yep.
Yeah. Now, there's no way in hell this is Kentucky. This like so obviously is Los Angeles. But I want to know, like, why do you guys think it takes place in Louisville, Kentucky, of all places? Why that?
Because they can't find the shipment, and that's the last place the shipment would be, probably.
It's not a bad guess. What about you, Joe?
Yeah, I've never given that any consideration, but yeah, I'll go with Eric's thoughts.
Yeah, no, the only reason I could think is because if it was Los Angeles, like, there's no way they could ever cover something like this up. Like, they end up bombing this area or whatever. So Louisville, Kentucky is, like, small enough where, like, okay, maybe this could get covered up and they could, like, it wouldn't make national news. But if you do this to New York or LA, like, or DC or something, like, there's no way you can cover this up.
Yeah.
I don't know. I couldn't think of any other reason, but it is clearly Los Angeles. So I don't know what they were trying to do to trick people, but I don't know.
Good point. So I also wanted to bring up Ernie. I really liked his character. I know we kind of just talked about him, but he's asking the hard-hitting questions when they bring the bags in. And he's like, I got these weasels. And it's like, what the fuck is going on? And like, he's like, it's like, what do you want me to do with them? He's like, can we just throw them in your crematorium? He's like, I don't think that's a good idea. I feel bad. It's It's like, how did you come upon these weasels? Like, could we do something else with them? Like, he's asking like hard hitting questions. He's like, well, just throw it in the thing. Like,
yeah.
And he just happens to have a gun on him too.
Yeah, that was wild. Like, imagine he just like walks up to him, he pulls it out. It's like, what the hell? This guy's on edge, man.
Well, he makes a very like scary call at the end. You know, when he's like up in the attic with Tina and he's got his arm around her and he's got the gun like to her head.
Yeah,
like,
Joe said this is a pretty disturbing movie. One other thing I was gonna bring up that I loved was like right after the acid stuff broke out, and then the kid is all like, "Oh my god, I gotta do something." He's like, "Hey, if you like this job, you're gonna do this." He's like this job? Like, fucking hate this job. Yep.
Yeah.
You know, Alec, you mentioned Tarman earlier, and I just want to say, like, this is one of my favorite movie zombies of all time. I mean, probably like Bub from Day of the Dead, which we still need to get to, by the way. Bub, I really love like the Father's Day zombie and Creep Show, and Tarman. That's like my top 3 zombies. You know, it's just whoever did this performing, like, it just looks like their body could like fall apart at any moment. I think that it's just an incredible piece of physical performance.
That guy's in a lot of the documentaries, Alan Troutman. And yeah, he is like a big lanky dude. Yeah. You didn't see him in the, he's in the documentary. You remember him?
Yeah. No, I do. I saw him speak, and I'm just blown away by his performance. And I think he came back for this part 2. I don't know if you want to talk about the sequels at all.
You know what? Since we're here, have you seen? There's 4 of them, right?
You know, I think there's 5, but I only really count 3.
Okay, they just start to really go off the walls, or?
Well, the last 2 were like direct-to-video movies released sometime in the 2000s that I think I rented them out of curiosity, but they were just movies that kind of just took advantage of the title, you know, kind of like Creepshow 3, like unofficial sequels. Right. But the other movies I saw a little bit out of order. Like I saw Return of the Living Dead 3 as soon as it came out on video. That was kind of a little bit of an event if you were paying attention to like direct-to-video horror movies at the time. It was like on the cover of Fangoria, and I think part 3 is quite a bit of fun. It's like really over the top, gruesome special effects, and yeah, it's almost like a Romeo and Juliet zombie story. It takes itself much more serious than the other 2 movies. Huh. And then Return of the Living Dead 2, I caught up with my friends way back when, and I remember us all being kind of disappointed because it's really trying to recapture the magic of this movie, but it has none of the attitude, none of the edge. It feels very silly, very watered down. I've watched it a few more times since, and it's grown on me a little bit. It's almost like you got to go in expecting something like Monster Squad, kind of like a kid-friendly zombie movie.
I mean, I love Monster Squad.
Yeah, I mean, it's if don't go in expecting something like this.
So there's not full frontal nudity, is what you're saying.
Exactly. So I was very disappointed, obviously.
But how do they explain away the bombing? Like, do they talk about that at all?
It doesn't take place in Kentucky. Tell you the truth, I don't remember where it takes place. And actually, James Karen and Tom Matthews come back. You know, they try and do as different characters, and they try and do this whole kind of comedy routine again, and it just feels a little stale. You know, it's just not as sharp, but it has its moments. It has some fun, you know, like zombie effects and stuff, and it's very 80s. This was like 87, 88, I think, and it's not really a punk rock movie. It's more like a heavy metal movie. It doesn't have that same like, I wish the kind of music influence remained a theme through the whole series. And there's just touches of it in the other movies, like in Return of the Living Dead 3, because that was the early 90s. The lead character like wants to go to Seattle and play play drums in a grunge band. And I wish the music element was as strong in the sequels as it was in this first movie.
Yeah, it's so punk rock, this one. It's beating you over the head with the punk rock.
I was watching this and I was like, I don't like remakes that much, but I was watching this and I was like, I think they could remake this movie, just Return of the Living Dead as is, and it could be really good.
Like a punk rock still?
Oh, still punk rock, like new age punk rock. I don't know. But like I like it's almost like futuristic punks in this film. maybe if they do something like that again, like kind of make it like not this world almost.